Hey everyone, Andrew here. In this video, I am starting off a new series on the channel, and in this series, I'm going to be building out different UI components in HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And recently, I came across this website called UI Design Daily, and what this website does is it basically has different UI elements and UI designs that are released every weekday. And I figured it would be a good opportunity to make a series out of this in which we can take some of these designs and build them out using HTML, CSS, and deal with some of the complexity that comes with working and building UI using web technologies. So for today's first episode, you can call it, I found this ratings card module that I think will be an easy introduction to begin the series on, and it also should make for an interesting coding tutorial. So I've already downloaded the file. The file is in Figma, so this was made in Figma. And I personally don't have Figma. I don't have a subscription to it, and I've never used it before. But I found a way to open Figma files using a website called photopea.com, which allows you to open pretty much any Figma, Sketch, Photoshop file out there. And by the looks of it, it really looks like a Photoshop version, but on the web. So, and it's completely free. You do get ads, but if you don't want that, you can donate and remove the ads. So I'm gonna go here and pick my file and drag and drop it in, and there we go, we have it. And I can see here that this was built out based on the what seems to be the Amazon review section, so that's pretty cool. And let's zoom in a little bit and take a look here and just give an inspection overview of what all the elements that are in the design, and then after that we can dive into the code, laying out the HTML structure, and then adding the styles. So first off, we have pretty much a rounded card section sort of thing. Inside of that we have a heading, and then another section which shows the stars, which I'm not sure why the stars were not included, but I think we can figure that out by probably extracting the image using crop tool or something. We can look into that later, but we're supposed to show the stars over here, and then the average number of reviews, and down here we have the overall customer ratings, the total amount of customers. So I can see already that this part this part should be a module or an HTML section on its own, and down here this will be another one. Down here this seems like a section that has a whole lot, but really we need to focus on just one of these, and then once we can build out one of these rows, we can pretty much replicate it for the rest of them. And it seems here that we can have some text on the left and right side to show some data about the review, and then in the middle we can use a progress bar, an HTML native progress bar, and use some CSS styling to style it up and add the fancy drop shadows and things like that. So let's go ahead and get started. Let me open up Visual Studio Code. So here I have created a ratings card folder, and inside of that I created an index.html and a styles.css. So let me close up this here since I don't need it. In the HTML file, what I'm going to do is just declare a basic structure for our page to get us started. So I'm going to do that by typing exclamation mark and then tab. And here I'm going to call the title ratings card, and it already formatted the code for me, which is good. So what do we need to do to get us started? Well, first of all, to represent the whole card, we need to have that wrapped in a div, and we'll call that reviews, and then inside of that we have a heading which is the customers reviews, this heading right here. So if we go back, we can I think this can be an H4 heading. It's not a major title, but at the same time it does have some prominence, so it does need to be a heading tag. So we're gonna use an H4 tag and we'll give it a class of reviews underscore heading, and I'm sort of using BEM's convention here for naming my styles to make things easier for me, and this will help us out later on when we're writing the CSS. Whoops. Okay, so this will say customer reviews, and down here we have a couple of different sections. So if we go back to the design, we have this section right here which shows the average reviews or average ratings, and then inside of that we have the rating stars and then the ratings average number. So let's build that out and take it from there. So let's go back, and then we're gonna need to create a div. Let's call it reviews average ratings, and then inside of that we should create a div that encompasses all the stars. So that will be average ratings underscore stars. So you can think of this as basically the div that will wrap all of the different stars. And below or after the stars, we want to show the 4.7 out of 5, which we can create that in a span tag, and we can call it stars at average rating score. And speaking of that, I actually think we can include that inside of our stars here, because this will come after the stars, so they can all be in the same div. And the last thing that we will include here after our stars section is the 40 customers rating, so that way it's this whole section encompassed all in one. So let's go ahead and create that. I believe that should also be a div, so let's create a div and we'll call it average ratings and then total customers, and inside of that we can enter the text 40 customer ratings. Okay, so far we haven't wrote any styling yet, so let's go ahead and write up some styling. So if we take a look at the design and I hover over and inspect the, well actually if you click here and open up the info tab and click on the heading, you can see that it's using a font family called Moly, and I looked this up. It turned out to be that this is a Google font, so we can easily grab that. And you can see here the nice thing with Photopea is that when you click on an element, it tells you some of the different styles in CSS. So you can see here the progress bar, when we click on it, it tells us that it has a drop shadow, and it gives us all the different X, Y, and Z points that we need to insert in our styles. So this can be very handy for adding these small adjustments in styling. So first of all, let's add the font and add our basic stylings for the classes we created so far, and then we'll take it from there. So here, before I write any stylings, first of all, I need to link my CSS file that I created, and it's called styles.css, and I have it opened up here. So the first thing we're going to need to do is import that font from Google Fonts, and to do that I've already gotten the URL from Google Fonts, and this is it. You can easily go to Google Fonts website. I believe it's fonts.google.com, select a font, and you can choose the import CSS tool or way, and it gives you the import URL that you can just copy paste, so you don't have to worry about that. Now we created a reviews class. So the reviews class is basically what encompasses everything we have in our card, and this class will have the property of display flex. The flex direction will be column, since everything is laid on top of each other. So we have the heading, stars, everything is on top of each other, so it's going to be flex column. We can also use the align items property to be center, so that we center everything on the screen, and we're going to give it a max width of 547 pixels. Now I already measured this before the video, so I kind of cheated a little bit, but you can easily use the ruler tool here and get a measurement for how far this should be. And actually you can see right here, 547 pixels, the exact width. So I used the max width to make sure that it adjusts responsively as we scale up or down our viewport. So we can also give it a width of 100%, so that way it always takes up as much width as it can while it is constrained with the 547. We'll also give it a border radius of 10 pixels, so that's going to give us that nice roundness along the edges. And we'll give it a background color of white, and for the padding it's going to be 25 pixels at the top, and then the right will be 0, and the bottom will be 69 pixels, and left will be 0 as well. Again, I've already made the measurements here to make sure that all the padding is correct, but you can easily come here and use the ruler tool to measure out the paddings and things like that. So, and since we, you might be asking, why are we not doing left and right padding? Well, the reason we're not doing left and right is because we used display flex and we align the content to be in the center, so that way whenever users adjust the screen small or up, we're not taking up quite a chunk of space, just empty space that's padding. The card will get smaller, this spacing will get slightly less and less, but at the same time we're not going to affect the main components inside our card, and it's not going to look all squished. So these are some of the small details you have to think about, but let's get back to the code. The last thing that I'm gonna add here is margin 0 auto, and this is to center all the elements. Okay, so the next thing that we need to add is, let's see, so we added the reviews. The next thing we should add is probably the reviews heading. So far, let me save the file, and let me actually start a live server. So I'm using an extension here in VS Code called live server. And the live server is a very handy extension. What it allows you to do is you can click go live down here, and it automatically starts up a server that does auto refresh for your static files, so you can easily do development without having to save and open the file back and forth and things like that. So let me click on go live, and we don't have, oh okay, so I have to click on here and then refresh. It doesn't seem like our fonts are being imported, so that's actually fine because we haven't defined the font family for any of our components yet, but it does seem that it did align the text and content in the center, which so far means that our styles are being applied and things are working okay. And let me actually zoom a little bit so you guys can see it better here. I think that's a little bit better, 200%. That should be good. Okay, so let me go back to the code and we can start styling up some of these text elements. Okay, so the next element is going to be the reviews heading, and for this one we're going to need to give it a font size of 32 pixels, a color of this we can extract from Photopea. So let's go back and actually select this, and it does give us all the stylings that we need right away. So we can pretty much just select all of them, click save, and the styles that are extracted are font size 32 pixels, color is a dark navy blue or purplish actually, font weight we have 700, and font family is Mooley, which we imported up here. So we can get this from Google Fonts. Now if we go back, refresh, we already have it styled up, so that's good. That means our styling are working. And let's go back to the code and continue. So let's see, the next element here that we have to style up is the reviews average ratings. So for that, we're not going to add too many styles, but we just need to give it a little bit of margin. So we're going to give it a margin bottom of 63 pixels. And the next element after that is going to be the average ratings stars. So let me copy that, and let's begin styling that. So for the average rating stars, this is the part of the element which is going to have all the different stars and then the amount of reviews. So let's go back, and we're going to need to do a display flex. And by default, display flex is has a flex direction of row, so we're going to leave that by default. We're not going to override, since we do want to have the content in a row, the stars and the text at the end. We're going to also need to align items center. And by aligning items center, we don't mean that the items are going to be aligned center horizontally, but vertically within our small container here. So we're going to also need to add some padding. It's going to be 0 up and down and 25 pixels on each side. The width is going to be 347 pixels, and I already got this values from Photopea. And the height will be 63 pixels. We're going to also need to give it a border radius of 32 pixels, a margin bottom of 8 pixels, and we also need to add background color. And let's see the background color for this. So if we hover over that, okay, we get the background color right here, and we actually get some of the other stylings as well. So I cheated a little bit before this video, and I already inspected all that, so that's where you can see all the different attributes. So if we go back, paste that in, and save it, we can go back to our browser overview, and we have our box already rendered out to the screen. So far so good. That means we're doing something and things are looking good. So let's go back, and I see here that I need to add some styling for my heading to make sure that the spacing here is not as much. So in order to do that, let's add some styles here to our heading. The first thing that we're going to need to add is margin 28 pixels up and down, and then 0 left and right. And we're going to also do text.align, which might be useless, but I think it is good habit to add things such as text align center to make sure that if you're just reading the code and you're not inspecting the code visually, that you do see that the text should be aligned in the center. So if we go back, refresh, the spacing here is reduced a little bit. It might not look like it, but if I zoom out, you can see, and I believe it closely matches the distance between the elements here. So if I actually use my ruler, see, it's actually it's around 20. It's 26. Okay, so maybe I'm a little bit off, but not by much. All right, so what is next? Let's see, we have the stars average ratings score. So let's copy that. This is where we have to add the 4.7 out of 5. So let's actually add the text, and I believe that's the correct text. Yeah, 4.7 out of 5. Okay, so let's actually define the styles for that here. So this we can use the same way we inspected the styles by clicking on it, and it gives us the styles we have to add. And we're gonna also add an additional style, which I'll show you why we need to add it in a second. So you see here we did add our text. It does appear to be visible and using the right font. However, you see that it's aligned to the left side of our box, and in order to make sure it's always aligned to the right, we're obviously going to add stars here shortly, but to make sure it always sticks to the right, we should give it a margin left of auto. So let's add that in. And here you can see margin left auto pretty much made it stuck to the right side, and auto always takes up whatever space is available, and in this case it's all of this. And when we add stars, it's going to take up whatever space is between that last star and the text here. So let's go ahead and continue. The last element we created here is the average ratings total customers. This is the last part in the element which shows 40 customer ratings. And here we need to also get the font values. So let me click on that, get font values. And in addition to that, we should also put a text align of center, so that way we can center the text. And let's inspect that and see. Okay, so it looks like our text has the right styling, it's aligned center, and so far everything seems to actually start to take shape and look more close to the version we have here. So up next, we're going to add the section that is going to have each review breakdown, and as well as the last text at the bottom here. So let's get back to the code. Let's go to the HTML. Okay, so the next piece of code that we're going to add is going to be after the reviews average ratings div. So in order to make it easier to see, we have the reviews div, which has a heading, and then the average ratings component. And then after that, we're going to create another div that's going to encompass all the different breakdowns, and we're going to call it reviews underscore breakdown. Now inside the breakdown, where we want to create reviews dot single star average. So this will represent a single row, and inside of that we're going to have a single star average amount. This will be the amount that appears in the beginning here. And then we're going to also need a single star average progress bar. Now inside the progress bar, we're going to create an actual progress bar. So we're going to use the HTML native progress to create the progress effect with the orange and stuff like that. We're going to label this progress bar underscore data. And this takes other parameters as well. So you can give it a max amount and a min or value. And this is the default value that will be shown. So for the first one, we're going to have 84 since it's 84%. And that's it for the progress bar. The last element we need to create is the percentage. And for that, we need to create another div called single star average percentage. And we can just hard code 84% here. And this will match what we have. So let's check out what we did so far. And you can see that we already have the first progress added. Obviously we didn't have any styles yet. We're going to work on that up next. But you can see once we style up the first one, we can replicate all that for the next 4, and the only thing that will be left will be that text at the bottom as well as the stars. So let's go back to the code and begin styling up what we just created. So to begin, we're gonna need to add some styling to the reviews breakdown. And before I do that, I want to wrap up all the different single review average stars in order to make it easy to add some stylings later on. And I'm gonna do that using reviews breakdown wrapper. And later on, we're gonna replicate this section to represent one for each of the different breakdowns. So let's go ahead and actually create the stylings for the top level class here. So the first one is gonna be reviews breakdown. This will have a display flex since we want it to be a row, and a margin bottom of 44 pixels. This is the amount of spacing we want to have between this whole section and the last piece of text. So we need to add the 44 pixels, sorry, and it's not 88. Okay, the next thing will be the reviews breakdown wrapper. And this will just have a margin auto, a 0 auto, to make sure everything is centered. And let's see, what do we have next? Let's style up the single row component. So review single star average. Whoops. Single star average. This will have property of display flex, and like I said, display flex by default has a flex direction of row, so we don't need to change that. And we're also going to give it a margin 22 pixels up and down, so that way we get the nice spacing between each row. Now inside of that, we have 3 elements that we need to style up, technically 4 because we have a nested progress bar here, which we'll get to in a second. First one is going to be the amount, so let's copy that, the amount. For the amount, I'm going to highlight the text here and copy all the styling that Photopea gives us. And after that, we have the single star average progress bar to style up. And the progress bar is going to have a max width of 280 pixels. It's going to have a width of 280 pixels, which actually in this instance we don't need to have a max width. We're going to also need a border radius of 10 pixels since it's going to be around progress bar. And we're going to need to have a background color, which we can get from here. Actually, it should be this background color since it's going to be the layer under the actual progress bar. For padding, we also want to give that 1 pixel. And the reason I'm adding one pixel padding here is because if we zoom in, you see that there is slight spacing between the actual progress bar and the track under it, or the layer under it. So that 1 pixel should be enough to give us that nice effect. And the last thing, we're going to add a margin of 0, 10 pixels, and this is to add the spacing between the elements here and here. So after that, we have the progress bar data, and this is the actual progress bar that we need to style up. So progress bar data will have a width of 100%, a height of 100%, padding 2 pixels, and we're also gonna override the appearance to none, as well as remove the border to none as well. Now, in order to style up the progress bar, the native one that comes with HTML, we have to use the WebKit prefix. So it's easier to show you than to explain that, but basically we have to use the notation of value, which means we are styling up the value element of the HTML progress bar, and then we have to add the WebKit progress value. So this will override the styles for the value itself. And for the value, we're going to give it a border radius of 8 pixels. And we're going to also need to add a filter. So if I highlight that, you see here we need to add a filter and a background color, which we can just copy from here and click save. And I have an extra dot here that I'm going to remove. Now, in addition to the WebKit progress value, we need to style up the progress bar itself. And to do that, we use the same notation, but instead of value, we use bar. And for the bar itself, we're just going to have a white background of white and a border radius of 10 pixels. Let's save that and go back to our code and take a look at how it looks so far. And wow, it looks pretty nice. I see here the background color is off a little bit. It should be this background color. So let me change that up. So this should be this, and if we go back, refresh, yep, we have the right background color, so that's good. The only thing that we have forgot to style is that percentage here. So let's go back and style that up. So the class name we gave to that is single star average percentage, and we can go here, and the styles for that we can easily get by clicking on Photopea. It gives us a font family of Muli, font weight 400, color, font size. So you can paste that here, save it, and refresh, and it's starting to take shape. So we can actually see how our card is starting to look like. And as I mentioned, since we have completed this, we can use that same styling to replicate the 4, 3, 2, and 1 star components below it. So I'm going to quickly do that. Okay, so I just finished replicating the component we created for the different stars. So I pretty much just copy pasted it multiple times and edited the content to have the same values as the wireframe here. And if I refresh, you see here we have the 5 star, 4 star, and I also made sure to update my progress bar value attribute to make sure that the progress bar represented the values accordingly. So the last thing that we need to add, or no, actually I should say the thing before last, is the text down here as well as the stars. So let me add the text down here, since that will be easy and quick, and then we can take a look at how we're gonna extract the stars. So if we go back to the code here, let me close up the reviews breakdown here and create a new div. We'll call this reviews calculation info, and here this will have a span that will be called calculation info underscore disk, which will be the short for description, and then that will have how do we calculate ratings. Okay, so let's style that up. So we go to, so here we're gonna need to take in this class, and the styling for that will be simple. We can just click on it and it gives us all the values we need. You can just paste that in, And let's go back to the code and see what happens. And boom, we already have it styled up and it's all good to go. The last thing we need to add now are the stars. And I mentioned the stars being a little bit difficult because Photopea did not detect them for some reason. So in this instance, what I'm gonna end up doing is I'm gonna use the crop tool on Mac here, which you can do by using Command-Shift-4, and it will allow you to highlight any part of your screen and crop it out or take a screenshot of it. So here I'm gonna take a screenshot of that, and this will upload it to my desktop. So I got the icon here, so I'm gonna drop it into a new tab within Photopea. And once you have it dropped, what you can do is you can come up here and select this icon and click on the magic wand tool. And I'm gonna zoom in a little bit and highlight the area where we want to remove the background, and then we're gonna click delete. Now you can see the image is now only has the star. It has deleted the background, so it now has a transparent background. And at this stage, what we could do is we can crop the image. So we can go ahead and crop it to remove any additional space we don't need, and just click on this sign right here, and it has cropped our icon. So once we're done with that, we can come up here, click File, Export As, and then we're gonna export this as an SVG. You can also export it as a PNG if you'd like, but usually SVGs are much smaller and much more efficient for small icons like this than a PNG when it comes to file size and page speed when the web page is loading. So we're gonna click on SVG. It's gonna ask us some about some options. We can click Save. So I've opened up the export that we got from Photopea, and this is pretty much what it has. It has an SVG, and inside of that it converted our image into a data image base 64 and put that inside of an SVG. I think this is not really the cleanest output of an SVG you can get for this icon. I believe if you would have gotten it straight from Figma or Sketch where it was designed originally, it would be a little bit cleaner, where it would use the path attribute and things like that. But in this case, I think it will be fine. So we will just go ahead and copy that and go to our code, and we'll need to drop it into the top area where we define the stars. So here I want to actually create a new div that will be stars single, and this will have the star by itself. And I'm gonna copy and replicate this for the rest of them, but I want to take a look at how it looks so far. Wow, and it looks great. So the star looks pretty good, so I'm just gonna replicate that for the rest of them. Let me go back to the code. Okay, so I've added all my stars here. It looks like we, since we did crop the icon, where we don't have the spacing we were getting in the design. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna roughly estimate the spacing in between them. So we're gonna give it maybe 10 pixels left and right, and we'll see how that looks. So I can easily do that by grabbing the class name. Let's do alright, and we'll give it a margin of 10 pixels on each side. Let's save that and see how that looks. So okay, maybe that's a little bit too much. Let me reduce that slightly, and we can do that and play around in the dev tools to see what looks best. So I think 8 pixels looks about right. So let's go ahead and change that to 8 pixels. All right, and there we have it. So we pretty much built our card as close to the wireframe as possible, and we also added the styles for their views, but we can't actually see that because the body color is white as well as our card. So in order to show that, I'm gonna add a quick snippet of code to change the background color. So at the top here, I'm gonna just change the body color, and now we can actually see our card. So you see it has the border radius that's in the design, the text at the bottom, and then each row with the nice progress bar using the HTML native progress bar and adding in that nice filter shadow. And up here we have the ratings with the stars and everything. So I hope this video was helpful. I hope you guys enjoyed coding along and seeing me write this up. I did start a new repository on my GitHub called UI Design Daily Challenge, which I'll be uploading newly designed components on here. So I'll be creating a new folder for each component that I design that will have the name of it as well as the day. So feel free to check this out, contribute to it. If you see any issues, feel free to open an issue ticket, and let's all write some code and learn CSS, HTML, JavaScript. There's a lot of other components here that I'm curious about exploring. So this series should actually start a lot of fun things that we can work on in the future. So alright, so I hope this video was helpful. If you think it was, feel free to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and show your support. I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.